Who's Afraid of Red, Yellow, and Blue 3? What does that title mean to you?
What does it mean to me?
Yeah.
Not much. No, they don't have any meaning at all per se. They are essentially, all color essentially stems from them. So they're what are called primaries.
Yeah.
And you can say in a way that white is a primary because it's the presence of light. Black is a secondary because it's the absence of light in a way. So the primaries, secondaries just seem like an interesting thing to play with. They're also the most difficult colors to work with directly as primaries. Because each has such a very different property. So they're not, in a sense, muted, or they're not modified so that they blend in some way or another.
What materials did you use for this project, and why did you
Which
use
project?
materials? Sorry. Who's Afraid of Red?
You're going to stick with red, yellow, and blue.
Yep.
I used what's called honeycomb aluminum. It's made for the aircraft industry, and the reason why they made it is lightweight. I mean, in the engineering of aircrafts, everything is about weight. The first thing is about weight. The less weight, the better.
Yeah.
But on the other is that, of course, it has to have strength. So there's a play between the two. And the honeycomb aluminum has tremendous strength, and yet at the same time it's very lightweight. If you made those panels out of just wood, just say 3/4 inch panel wood, they'd weigh 10 times what they weigh right now. And probably in this site or in a lot of sites, you'd then start having an engineering problem by hanging them from the beams. There'd be a real question: would the beam support the weight? So in this particular case, given that they're quite large, and the honeycomb aluminum became a great material.
Growing up in Southern California has affected the way.
Growing up in California, like I say, when you're 16 and you take off, it's footloose and fancy free. I mean, it's the world's your oyster, and you're not burdened by all kinds of assumptions and histories and all the kind. This is a great place to, at least when I can only speak for my moment in time. Like I said, I really had a happy childhood. So I'm not afraid of beauty. I'm not afraid of joy. I'm not afraid of things that are really interesting and fun and in that sense of the word. To me, that's what it's about. So I make feelings the equal of intellect, and I make beauty the equal of truth. Okay.
How does the space define the piece?
Well, you come to the space, like let's say a space that size in New York is a big space. That space in Wyoming is minuscule. I mean, in Wyoming, so there's a whole different context about the space itself. In New York, with the buildings around everything, when you come out of that into a situation, you're already conditioned to deal with it relatively, in other words, in relation. And the same thing is true here. The key there, and the reason I made it larger, I did this one once before in New York, but the key has to do with, if I'd have kept them the same scale they were in New York, which was, it was 16 by 22. Here it's 20 by 22, which is actually quite a bit of difference.
Yeah.
It would have probably looked like an object in the room. And I wanted it to take on the whole room, both physically, so it had a sense of presence in which it commanded the room, and then of course all the reflections and all that sort of thing take on the room on another level. So I think it actually worked out pretty well. Scale's pretty good. It feels very comfortable in there. The thing about looking, say if you're standing in where the red is, and you're looking at it, you think it's red. Of course it has the yellow square is reflecting in it, but of course the yellow square is not yellow because it's orange now, because it's mixed with the orange and it's in the ceiling in there. So the color, you hardly ever see the color without another color involved in it. So it starts out as very simple primaries, but when you take that, say that orange, that then becomes the secondary, so because you've now mixed blue and yellow, which make orange, and so you have like what the other room is, where they're separated, but they're actually interspersed within the piece itself. So it doesn't have just the primaries, it has all the secondaries there too, except people tend not to, cognate on that particularly. when I look around at the world, there are no frames. That's not how we see the world at all. We're like in an envelope in which all this information is coming on four-dimensionally from everywhere, and it's changing and moving all the time. That our seeing is infinitely more complex. So you realize that the idea of framing it is the same thing as intellectualizing. In other words, taking it down to its essences or essentials, but it's not about how we see it all. So the idea of framing is really a highly stylized learned logic, okay? And we're all inculcated to that through education, through experiences, and through a history that leads up to that. My argument always was, there's no such thing as an empty room. If you took all the events in a room, in this room here, the corners, the light, the shapes of the wall, this and that, all this, and you put it in a painting, you'd have something very complex. I mean, you know, in the painting, you might call it a Mondrian, you know, and there it is, making, you know, it's a painting with, it's going on around you all the time. I mean, that's the point, is that when you pay attention to perceiving, events are taking place. I see shadows on a wall that are more beautiful than anything I've ever made in my life, you know. And so there's a richness in being aware of, and it's totally free. It's there all the time.